Welcome back to Strategy Simplified, the go-to podcast for aspiring consultants and working professionals who want to sharpen their skills and accelerate their careers. Today, we're diving into one of the most underrated superpowers in consulting, business storytelling. In this episode, the tables are turned, and I'm interviewed by Emily Watkins from Integreon to break down how great consultants move beyond information overload, use storytelling to build trust, and guide clients toward confident decisions. Whether you're preparing for case interviews, navigating client meetings, or leading teams, the lessons in this episode will help you communicate with clarity, influence, and impact. Let's dive in.
All right. Hello. So I'll say welcome. I'm Emily Watkins, Senior Marketing Manager for Integreon and Executive Editor of Scaling Greatness. And I'm so excited to talk to you today, Namaan Mian, as my guest to discuss, I should say COO of Management Consultant. And I'm so excited to talk with you today about a topic that I think a lot of us think about a lot, and that's connecting with people and how to tell the stories that we want to tell to our clients in a meaningful way. And I know that you've spoken about this quite a bit, and we've talked about it a bit, but I'd love to just kind of dive into it. So, thinking about just the world today, everyone's talking about AI always, all the time, and how can we use it to be faster, to be more efficient, to do everything. It seems like faster is always better, right? But when you think about connecting with clients, and winning their trust, especially in the B2B world and consulting, is that really an area where we can use AI to help?
Well, Emily, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yes and no is the short answer to your question. So if you are going to use AI to replace some of the client interactions that you're having now, no, that's not going to build trust. If you're going to leverage AI to try and extract deeper or better insights for your clients, that can lead to increased trust. And so I think the conversation around AI is a more nuanced one. And it's just, how do we leverage this in a way where it helps us become more efficient, it helps us drive better outcomes for our clients, but in a way where we're not losing our own voice and our own perspective. I think that is really what clients are paying for in an increasingly changing world. Is I want an outside expert perspective that I cannot get elsewhere. And that to me
Yeah,
is the real power of storytelling. It positions you as an advisor, not just as a translator of data. Because there's a
right.
lot of places I can go to get translation. There's fewer places I can go to get insight. And the way that I think about my own work is that clients are paying me for insight. They're not paying me just to like dump data in their laps and say, here you go. Here's all the
Mm-hmm.
information. Why don't you go ahead and do
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want with this? They probably already know what information's out there. They probably already know that there's 17 options for them to take to solve their problem. They're not paying me to give them all the options. They're paying me to tell them what the best thing to do is and why. And so
Right.
that perspective, that prioritization, that stack ranking, that ability to take insights that my analysts give me, to take insights that, yes, AI might even give me, and then determine, okay, do these fit the use case that my client is experiencing? Do these make sense? Do these align with the business acumen that we have? That type of work is purely human in nature. And then putting those insights into a narrative that my clients will believe and that will resonate with them, that's also a human endeavor. And so
Yes.
can AI create slides for you or outputs for you? Absolutely. Can it create stories for you? Not very well, not yet. And so the ability to structure a narrative, the ability to say, here's what we think you should do. Here's why it matters to you. Here's the pain it's going to help you avoid, or here's the gain it's going to help you realize. That
Mm-hmm.
structuring still needs to be done at a human level. And that structuring and that storytelling is really what builds trust. Because what I've learned across my career, Emily, is that clients and executives don't necessarily respond to data. They respond to narrative. And what they're looking for isn't necessarily more data. They're looking for more confidence in the decisions that they're making. And
Yes.
storytelling gives them that confidence in a way that just more output doesn't necessarily. So that's the longer answer to your question around how to leverage AI to build trust.
Yeah, no, I think that's really I think that's so spot on. I think too about it, what clients are also looking for is what is uniquely you, your experience, right? And your ability to take all that information from all the different inputs to give them what you think is the best solution. And that's not something that AI can do because it's too complicated and it involves years and years of experience and knowledge, to get to that point. So that kind of brings me to the idea of like, okay, so if storytelling is the way that we, start to build trust and start to present forward what we think the best answers are, what how do you tell a good story? Like do you have some practical tactics or ideas for telling stories that clients like want to hear? How do you craft that in a practical way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing I'll say, Emily, is even if you trained AI on like all of your past cases and projects and models and all that kind of stuff, it could probably get you like directionally correct in terms of like an answer. But what it doesn't know is your stakeholders. And so it doesn't know,
Mhm.
right, like what the competing narratives are, what the competing priorities are, what the competing incentives are inside of your client organization. And that's really what storytelling helps you navigate. So
Mhm.
with that being said, okay, how do you structure a story? Well, to me, when I'm in an advisory role, no matter if I'm in a kickoff meeting, an interim meeting, like a final kind of recommendation meeting, my my stories are structured similarly in that within the first 5 minutes of that particular story, I tell you what it is that I want you to do or believe.
Mhm.
So that's called answer first. It's not novel. I didn't come up with it. But what I do is within the first 5 minutes, I tell you this is why we're here today, and this is what we would like to accomplish.
Mhm.
And I found that coming in with that kind of statement actually helps me build trust because clients and partners like, okay, these people have a plan. Number one,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And that's part of what helps build trust. Number two, what that does is it helps clarify for my own team, like what our thinking is around a particular meeting, like why we're putting all our work together. Number three, it helps clarify for the client why they're there. They're busy. They've got 12 other meetings and they don't necessarily want to be there unless we give them a good reason to be there. So
Yes.
I want to give them that reason up front. And then number four, I actually want to get a reaction out of them. I want them to tell me whether that resonates with them, whether they agree with it, whether they disagree with it. I actually don't care usually whether they upfront agree with what I'm saying or not. What I
Mhm.
do care about is if they're engaged with what I'm saying. And in a
Mhm.
virtual world, right, where a lot of our meetings are held over Teams or Zoom or what have you, I'm I'm competing for your attention not just like with like the normal distractions of work, but also with Angry Birds and also with like and also with like kids walking into someone's home office, right? Like there are
Yes.
more distractions in our world than ever before. And
Mhm.
so I need to convince you in the first 5 minutes that engaging is going to be worth your time. And so
Yes.
does that mean that I'm controversial for no reason? No. Like I'm not like it's not clickbait. I'm just telling
Right.
you right up front like what I would like to accomplish today and how it affects you. And then I'm
Mhm.
going to walk you through after that the evidence base for why that's the right thing for us to accomplish, why that's the right thing for us to believe. And then we're going to walk through at the end like how we would do that. And
Yeah.
so that kind of structure can be adapted for kind of steerco meetings. It can be adapted for panel discussions. It can be adapted for interim meetings. For kick, like there's nuance for all the different
Mhm.
kinds of meetings that we have, but the general structure remains the same, which is I'm going to try and share a couple minutes of context to get everybody on the same page. Then I'm going to very quickly tell you why we're all here today. Then I'm going to tell you kind of why this is important for you to pay attention to, and we'll build the conversation from there. And
Mhm.
that's the structure. And what I do with a lot of the organizations I work with is we put templates together so that for every kind of meeting that they have, every kind of client interaction that they have some kind of template that gets them 70 to 80% of the way there in terms of structuring the story. And there's alignment across the team around what the story looks like at a high level for each kind of client interaction. And then
Yeah.
you have managers or senior consultants who can go in and start to fill in the content, but there's already been alignment around what the structure looks like. And that actually is what helps them move faster. And
Yes.
so that would be the way that I would approach storytelling. Is the way I do approach storytelling for all of my client engagements. It's answer first for all of the reasons I just told you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I love hearing that because I think I think that presentations and PowerPoints, whatever you call them in your industry, whether it's, pitch books or client decks or whatever, it's it can be such a heavy weight sometimes, the, like, death by PowerPoint or, like, depending on whether you're making it, working on it, or in a meeting where it's being presented, it seems like a lot of times the default is to just kind of, like, put everything but the kitchen sink in there and then walk through it, and so, like, a lot I love that structure that
The
you've laid
default,
out. Yeah.
yeah, the default is the academic approach. It's what we were taught in school, which is write a 10-page paper and then tell me at the end what you found. And
Right.
and in the real world, like you don't have the kind of time or attention span of your audience to walk through all the methodology first, to walk through all the options that you looked at that didn't work. And
Right.
a lot of times people default to that for two reasons. Number one, it's what they were taught. But number two,
Mhm.
it feels risky to be answer first because
Mhm.
what feels what feels less risky is for me to walk the client through all the work that I did. And
Right.
one of the mindset shifts that I have to go through, not just with my team but with the teams that I train, is I have to convince them that your client actually doesn't care how much work you've done. All they care about is, can you solve their problem? That's what they're paying you
Right.
for. And so
Yes.
walking them through all the methodology, walking them through all the failed options, walking them through all the analysis. There's a time and a place for methodology. There's a time and place for walking them through the analysis. It's not the first 55 minutes of a 60-minute meeting.
Mm-mm.
So what you do
Mhm.
when you give somebody an answer or a recommendation first is you're giving them a pair of glasses. And then what you are saying is, this is the lens through which I want you to view all of the data that's to follow. And then you actually
Yes.
help them interpret all the work that you've done. But when you
Mhm.
start with the methodology, when you start with the analysis, the risk is actually that they're going to interpret your work in a different way than you want them to interpret. And they
Yes.
get to a different
Mhm.
conclusion by the end. And now you end up misaligned instead of aligned. And you've got to
Yeah.
work twice as hard to get everybody
Yeah.
on the same page at
You
the
get
end. So
stuck on some little point that you didn't even really
exactly,
wanna talk about, but somehow they hone in on that. Yeah. So,
exactly.
I think, like, are there any do you have apart from your templates, are there any other, like, tricks that you have or things that you tell your team, to avoid falling into that trap, or for someone who maybe doesn't have what sounds like a pretty great template library going on,
Yeah.
um, what can you do to kind of make sure you avoid that?
Yeah.
Would you kinda stick with that? Like, stick with the structure, stick with the templates, and just really
So
hone in on that? Like, just don't vary from this. This is what you need to do. You have the confidence to put your answer first.
yes, and then here's what I would say, Emily. So the templates are just a tool. They're not magic. All it means is that you put a lot of thought and strategy into something once, and then it's able to be replicated and scaled, so that you don't have to put that same level of thought into every single output that you have to create moving forward. So that's the power of a template. And I think once you learn a methodology and you start to get proficient with it, then you are able to start to break the rules. So I would say early on, stick to the rules so that you can break them later. That's how I work with my teams. And so the way that I would operate in terms of giving people best practices is I would say, ask yourself and ask your team 3 questions first. And if you don't have the answers to these 3 questions, you're not ready to move on in terms of telling a story. So question number one, who's my audience? And it sounds really basic and simple, but it amazes me how many leadership teams I work with on like big presentations, kind of big pitches, and they don't know who the most important person or the most important group is inside the room. So who's my audience, right? Who's going to be there? Are they going to represent different agendas? If they are representing different agendas, whose agenda is going to win out? Like, identify your audience first. So who's my audience? Number two, what do I want them to do or believe? So, and look, I work with a lot of sales teams where they'll tell me, hey, I want them to buy from me. And I'm like, that's great. But if this is a discovery meeting and this is the first time that you're interacting with a prospect, they're probably not going to buy from you after the first meeting. What is
Yeah.
it that you want them to do coming out of this first meeting? Do you want them to share more data with you? Do you want them to say yes to a demo? Right? Like, there's got to be like a specific ask that you have coming out of this meeting. And the same is true for client services.
Right.
Like, you're not going to get your client to buy into the final recommendation in the interim meeting. You don't even have the final recommendation yet. So what is the ask coming out of this meeting specifically?
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's not what do you want them to do eventually, right? But
Exactly.
right now in
Right
this
now,
specific moment. Yeah,
what
in
is it
this
that you want them
meeting.
to do? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I work with a lot of teams inside of the Fortune 500, and you know, they're putting a strategy together. They're putting a roadmap together. The story you tell finance is different than the story you tell tech. Right. And the
Mm-hmm.
story, which is different than the story you tell operations, which is different than the story you tell to the CEO. And so it's the same project, it's the same roadmap, but it affects everybody differently. And so
Yeah.
because the audience is different, everyone needs to know something a little bit different, and everyone needs to believe something a little bit different. And so you have to identify, okay, who am I meeting with? And then what is it in a perfect world that I want to have happen coming out of this meeting with this group of people at this point in time? And then
Mm-hmm.
the third question to answer is, why or how do I want them to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you start to identify, okay, am I telling a strategic story that answers the why questions? Am I telling a tactical story that answers the how questions? Am I telling a blended story? That then helps you determine what data you have to go source. And and then the challenge becomes not sharing all of the reasons why or how they should do something, but sharing the top reasons. So
Yes.
people, when they first hear about answer first, they're like, okay, this is easy. I'll just move my answer to the top of my story and I'll be done. And I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's like step one of many. The real power of this framework is not just putting your answer first, it's identifying the right answer. It's making sure you only have one answer per story. And then it's putting a curated story behind that answer that says, look, I know there are 28 reasons why we should do this, but here are the top three. And I've
Mm-hmm.
identified the top three that are going to resonate with this particular group of people at this particular point in time, because my goal isn't to prove that I did all the work. My goal isn't to prove I looked at 28 things. My goal is to gain buy-in and motivate action. And usually, to gain buy-in and motivate action, people need to believe the top reasons why something is true, not all the reasons why something is true. And so that curation process is really where a lot of the magic lies, if you will, in terms of this structure.
Yes. I love that. That makes so much sense.
Leaders, quick question. Are your team's presentations moving decisions or just moving slides? If you've ever watched an audience's eyes glaze over in minute 7 of a meeting, it's not your data that's the problem. It's the story behind it. Management Consulted's executive presentation training shows your team how to turn numbers into a narrative that aligns with stakeholder goals and actually drives action. Our instructors have spent their lives in the boardroom, not the classroom. And we bring real-world experience to over 200 training programs per year. The content is tailored, practical, fast, and anything but boring. You'll get frameworks to craft a clear narrative that accomplishes what you want, sharpen your executive presence, and influence senior leaders in the moments that matter. If you're ready to up-level board updates, customer pitches, and internal readouts, book a tailored workshop for your team today. Head to managementconsulted.com/storytelling. That's managementconsulted.com/storytelling and unlock the power of persuasion with our executive presentation and storytelling training.
Think I think a lot about um how we connect with people in today's world. You know, whether we're having a meeting in person, which feels more rare these days, you know, or virtual, but especially in virtual, you know, once you've got your wonderful solution crafted, you've got your story laid out, you know, you've got your who, what, and why. Um, how do you then convey that, or is it just a part of the process in a human way? Because I think I've worked from home now for more than a decade, which like I don't know if I'll ever go back to the office. I love it so much. But one of the downsides is I'm alone. I only speak to people, over the internet, just like this, and I think a lot about how do I connect with not just my coworkers, but with clients and other people when I'm not ever actually meeting them. And when you're trying to build trust with a client and you're trying to sell them on this story that you put together just for them, it can be difficult when you're only meeting, you know, through the screen, like how do you connect with people when your only point of contact is in the digital world? And I think for me, when I think about it, I'm I come from an arts and music background, and so I can go off on a tangent and nerd out about a lot of things, but one a great example that I like to think about when it comes to finding some humanity in the digital world is think about like a song on your phone. When you listen to it, most likely the way that it got there was from a digital to digital connection, right? Like the music was recorded, digitally transformed into zeros and ones, right? And then it was placed into the format that gets onto your phone, and then you hear it, and it sounds great. You would never question it, right? And with the technology that we have, you don't even actually need a physical instrument to get that music into the digital form. You can do it from your phone. You don't even need a computer. But at the same time, if you take that song and you press it on vinyl and you play it, you will hear something different. And the reason being that the actual physical molecules of vinyl and the technology there rounds out the sound. It mellows it, it softens it, and it changes. And I think to me, it sounds better. Anyone could debate that, but it's kind of like adding in this real world analog into the digital that kind of creates this like more perfect moment where you have something that softens it up. And so when I think about, you know, how I connect with people only through digital channels, that's something that I think about a lot is like how can I round those edges? How can I bring the human factor, I think, into that? And I wouldn't say I have one answer for that, right? But that's kind of just in the back of my mind is like trying to be as human as possible, trying to be as real as possible. Maybe I avoid too much business speak language as a way to kind of like connect in a more real way, or just a variety of different things. But I'm curious about like where do you sit with this idea, and how do you work with that in your realm with that? How do you build human connection if you're not meeting someone face to face?
Good question. Love the analogy. One of the things I've been telling our teams is that our competitive advantage and differentiator moving forward is going to be providing people with an analog experience. And what I mean by that is providing them with a human experience that can't be replicated digitally. And ultimately, the reason I say that is because people work with people and people work with people that they like. And so
Yes.
if you're in any services business, I don't care if you're a consultant or a plumber, doesn't matter, right? Like if you're in a services business, like ultimately, like one of your competitive advantages is going to be that people like to work with you. And
Hmm.
so a part of that is being human. And I think likability is a skill. I think building rapport is a skill. It's not something that some people are born with and other people aren't. It's something that you refine and grow in over time. And so I'll just give you a few of my tips for like how to create human connection like through digital
Love it.
interactions. I'll just rapid fire them, and then you can let me know if there's something you want to dive deeper into. But my
Okay.
my my first one, Emily, is something you've been doing really well on like in our conversation, then it's smile. Like when all I can see is your face, when I don't have the benefit of like interpreting your body language, you have to be more expressive in your face. And
Yes.
so one of the things that I consciously work on when I am in kind of digital interactions like this is you have to be able to see on my face that I'm enjoying myself. You have to be
Mhm.
able to see on my face that I'm open towards you, that this is fun, that I'm engaged. I have to actually work a little bit more intentionally to do that, because if we were in the same room, you'd be able to pick up on it almost subconsciously. But
Yeah.
but here, like
Yes.
I have to try a little bit harder, and that's number one. It's smile. So it's not rocket science, but it's amazing to me how many people look like when they're on calls like this that they're being tortured. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if you look like you're being tortured, well, I'm not going to enjoy the conversation either, because I don't want you to feel like you're experiencing pain. And so that's number one. Number two is I try to make some space at the beginning of my client interactions for small talk. And this
Mhm.
sounds, again, like, okay, Naman, you're overthinking this. Of course, like I would have small talk with people before I dive into a conversation. Yes, that's intuitive to me, but it's amazing to me like how many consultants and principals I coach where that's not normal for them. Like the way that they were taught, what they're comfortable with is just coming in and starting the meeting. And a big part of executive presence is actually building that kind of personal rapport and that human connection. And so I'll always try and start by referencing something about the city that the client is from, or something about the weather, or something that's been in the news, or something about sports, right? Like you find the things that you like to talk about. So,
Yeah.
but there is an opportunity for you to kind of start with something a little bit more personal. And I always try and take the 2 minutes to do that. But the reason that I can do that is because I've planned out the entire meeting. So I know when
Mhm.
the 2 minutes is up that it's my job to transition us to the business at hand. So where a
Yeah.
lot of people fall down is they start the kind of rapport building and then 15 minutes has passed and you haven't actually gotten any work done, right? So
They're like,
so
I
there
guess we should get to this now.
yeah, there is a balance. But
Mhm.
if you feel confident in your ability to transition, and if you've planned to have 2 to 3 minutes of rapport building up front, then you feel more comfortable kind of having those conversations.
Yeah.
And then a lot of this is more art than science. Like if if you feel like in the moment this is what the client needs, this is what the relationship needs, okay, then great, adjust your plan.
Right.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's not formulaic. Like you have to like learn over time just from interacting with people, like what is needed in this moment. There's no
Mhm.
playbook I can give you for how to handle people. Like you just have to,
Right.
the more experience you get, the more you realize, okay, I think it's okay for me to transition here. You know what? I think we need to like stick on this kind of more personal track, and this is going to be more beneficial for the relationship in the long run. And you just learn that over time. So the earlier that you can start to be in these kinds of meetings, the earlier that you can start to even observe more senior people in these meetings, the more you're going to start to catch this. And I would say that a lot of this is more caught than taught. So being in the
Yeah.
room, even virtually, matters a lot. And it's one of the reasons I would tell the junior folks that I mentor, hey, like finagle your way into these meetings. Like offer to take
Mhm.
notes, right? Like offer to do whatever you have to do to get into these meetings, because you will pick up by osmosis what you don't even realize you're picking up in the moment. And
So
then
true.
the last thing that I'll just say is, in a digital environment specifically, I build in like predefined engagement points every 5 slides or 5 minutes. So one of the ways to build a connection is to have a conversation. It's not to lecture. And so
Right.
every 5 slides or every 5 minutes, I will have a question I ask people, like that's pre-thought
Mm.
out. I'll have a poll that I
Uh-huh.
put together. I'll cold call someone. Like there are like these 7 tactics that I have for like engaging people in a virtual environment. And I will pick a different one every 5 minutes and I will put it like in my deck. And so it's there.
Yeah.
And then there are opportunities for us to engage beyond that. Like there's going to be questions that arise organically. There's going to be conversation that's facilitated outside of that. But as a backstop, I have it pre-planned. What I don't want is to talk for 28 minutes and then in the last 2 minutes for us to have a conversation. I want us to have a
Right.
conversation as we go. And that's a part of how you build that connection, but it's thought out ahead of time.
Mhm. That's such a good point to build it in because you can get so easily distracted or just you kinda get into the conversation or the presentation, and next thing you know, yeah, you you've been talking for 20 minutes and no one else has said a word. And now there's this, so what do you think? kind of strange thing as opposed to really going through it. I love that. Those are really good points. Might have to steal some of those. um, so I think that what might be interesting to do as we kind of come to a close here is take your point of bringing, laying out who, what, and why for your meetings to our conversation today, because we're going to, you know, write this up into an article, maybe put it out as a podcast or some video clips. And I think that could be really interesting to talk about really quickly. So for today, what's the who, the what, and the why of our conversation today from your perspective?
Yeah, Emily, that's a great question. It's the first question I asked you when we first met,
That's right.
because there's a lot more I could say about this topic than we've talked about in the last 25 minutes. But from my perspective, the who is you have a lot of professional services folks in your community, in your audience.
Mm-hmm.
That's the primary audience for today. They work in some kind of client services or client facing context. That's the who. The what for me today was to introduce a communication approach that I think would be beneficial for them, that would help them clarify their own thinking, that would help them increase the efficiency of their storytelling and also increase the efficacy of their storytelling, increase the effectiveness of it. And the why are the three reasons that I just mentioned, right? More efficient, more effective, and ultimately the goal is that you would build trust in a deeper way and a faster way with your clients. So that's the way that I was thinking about our conversation today. And our audience can tell me where I got it right and where I got it wrong. But as we were talking, that's who I was keeping in my mind. And then that's the North Star that I was keeping in my mind as well, in terms of what's the overall reason I'm here today and what are kind of the big reasons that I think people are going to stay engaged with this conversation and perhaps try out some of the things we've been talking about today.
Yeah, perfect.
Can I just share one analogy that I think just might help tie this conversation up?
Yes,
So,
please.
so I loved your kind of musical analogy, and it reminded me of another one that I think about when I contrast communication approaches, and I call it McDonald's versus Michelin star. So I think of non-curated, non-answer first communication as going to a McDonald's. So when you walk into a McDonald's, at least when I'm at an airport, I walk in, I look at the menu board, and there's a whole heck of a lot of options on the menu. There's
Mm-hmm.
like 5 different types of chicken sandwiches. There's all day breakfast. The snack wraps are back now. There's a McRib sometimes, right? Like there's a lot going on the menu board. And sometimes you can experience paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly do not ask the person behind the counter, hey, what's good here?
What do you
Like,
like?
what do you like? What should I have for lunch today? Like, that's not a question you ask the cashier at McDonald's, because their job isn't to be an advisor. Their job is
Right.
just to facilitate an information exchange. Their job is to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
sir, that'll be $8.99. Sir, the ice cream machine is broken, right? They're communicating information to me, but what they're really doing is they're just playing the role of a facilitator. And because
Mm-hmm.
of that, that job can be automated away. A kiosk can tell me how much my meal will cost. A kiosk can tell me the ice cream is out of stock. And so,
Mm-hmm.
because that person in that environment does not play the role of an advisor, their job is at risk of disappearing. And that to me is like indicative and representative of non-answer first communication, where
Mm-hmm.
you give your audience a menu board of options. You say, here's all the information. Why don't you just go ahead and pick something? And what you're doing is you are leading them towards a place most likely of paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with a Michelin star restaurant. The first thing I notice when I walk into a nice restaurant is how much smaller the menu is. This place is
Yeah.
asking me to spend 50 times the money that McDonald's is asking me to spend, yet they're giving me
And you
less
get like
information to do it.
5 choices
Yeah.
max or something. Yeah.
It always strikes me, you're asking me to make a higher value decision, yet I have less data to make that decision. It's just interesting to
Mm-hmm.
me. And
Yeah.
and even though I have like a smaller menu of options, I have a waiter or a waitress that I get to lean on, and they really do play the role of advisor in that environment. Like
Mm-hmm.
I asked them, hey, what's good here? That's a normal question to ask at a nice restaurant. Hey, if
Mm-hmm.
I get the steak, can you pair it with like the best red wine? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
if we order these 5 things for the table, can you course them out for us? Like I
Mm-hmm.
lean on my waiter or my waitress as an advisor in that environment. And I certainly have walked out of a nice restaurant before thinking, I'm really glad that Julie was our waitress because we would have had a different experience if she wasn't. I've
So
I've
true.
never once walked out of a McDonald's thinking that cashier was really good at their job. Right?
Right.
Because it's
Yeah.
just not the role that they play in that environment. And so if I
Mm-hmm.
could just extend the analogy for a minute further, like when I'm communicating, I think of my job as being the Michelin star waiter. My job is to serve my stakeholders data in a way that they can consume it. And that means that I give them limited options and that I walk them through why I think that option is the best for them and how, like, why I think that's going to be the most effective solution for them. Like, I am there playing the role of an advisor. I am there sharing my perspective. I'm not giving them, even though I might have looked at the menu board of options, I'm not sharing that with them.
Right.
And so my job is to be like that waiter who they can lean upon. Again, because I found over the course of my career that my stakeholders don't necessarily want more data, they want more confidence. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's my job
Mm-hmm.
inside of every interaction. It's to position myself as an advisor, and it's to increase the confidence that my stakeholders have in the decisions that they're making.
Yeah. Such an excellent point. It reminds me, just tiny little sidebar, of just the concept of decision fatigue, decision overload, was same thing. Like everyone has to make so many decisions every day. Everything is a decision, a decision, a decision. And I think I found, like, as a mom, that has only increased since having a child, that the number of decisions that I have to make every day is can be just like crushingly overwhelming. And I think that factors into a lot of that too. You hand someone, a presentation that, just like the McDonald's menu, perhaps, is so many decisions. They're like, well, I don't want to make all these decisions. Now I have to go through and make all of these choices of which is better and what is this. And I want it curated down. And I think a really famous example of that is Barack Obama, when he was president, and maybe perhaps before, replaced all of his socks with only the same kind. So just one kind of sock, no other options. And his reason was, I have to make so many decisions every day that are so much more important than my socks, right? And so removing that decision, that one simple decision at the start of the day, and then applying that in all the other kinds of little ways, helps you then have the mental energy to make the bigger decisions. And so I think that plays right into what you're saying, that, like, you're also helping your clients avoid all of those unnecessary decisions that you've already made for them. Really, you've done the work, right? And so you're coming to them with, like, no, this is the best meal for you. And this is what I recommend for you. You don't need to worry about all of these little decisions. This is what I'm here to help you. And I think that's a really interesting part of it
100%.
too.
To me,
Yeah.
that's what they're paying for. And if they want to see the whole menu, if they want to see what we discarded, great, we'll show you. But
Yeah,
we're not gonna proactively bring it to you because it's not the most important thing for you to know.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Naman. I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And if you can, let us know, where listeners, readers can find out more about your business, and to follow up on a lot of what you've had to say here if they're interested in learning more, because I know this was really valuable. Uh, 30 minutes, 40 minutes for myself. So please tell us a little bit more.
I appreciate
Take
it,
us out.
Emily. I, I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening today. Emily, thanks so much for having me again. If you're interested in learning more about the trainings that we provide consulting firms and Fortune 500 companies alike, you can go to managementconsulted.com/storytelling. And there you'll find information about our trusted advisor training. So we work with teams to help them position themselves as trusted advisors, both for internal and external clients. We also do one-on-one executive coaching, and then we do project management training as well. So Again, you can go to managementconsulted.com/storytelling if you want to learn more about how to position your teams for maximum impact. If you've got follow-up questions based on today's conversation, I always welcome a back and forth. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just connect with me there, DM me there. Emily, maybe we can put the link to my profile in the description of this video. But just feel free to reach out. Let me know that you heard me on this podcast so that I know you're not some random crazy person. But then I'm happy to answer your questions, to have a conversation, and just get to know you a little bit more. But again, Emily, thanks so much for having me today.
No, thank you so much. Wonderful conversation. And I'll just say, as a wrap up on my end, that we'll publish this conversation in readable form in Integreon's LinkedIn newsletter called Scaling Greatness. I mentioned at the beginning, Integreon, we're a business services company that works very closely with a lot of consulting firms and financial advisory firms and et cetera. And one of the things that we do is provide creative service support for people. So maybe you have an excellent template library like you do, Namaan, but like you need 10,000 of them a year. And so that's one of the things that that we help with among many others. And you can find out more on integreon.com for that. And we run a newsletter called Scaling Greatness, which is really just meant to be a little place where we can talk about what makes businesses great and how to make them even better, which I think this conversation fits right in. We call it Cultivating Business Excellence and Innovation is kind of our tagline, but really, it just means that we want to talk about things that you want to listen to or you want to read about and that help you better in your job, help your business grow in a positive way. And so we will be publishing this there as well as the podcast. And I can't thank you enough for joining me today. And yes, have a great afternoon and thank you.
That's all for today's episode of Strategy Simplified. Thanks for listening and for investing in your own professional growth. If you like what you heard, leave us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on the consulting path, whether breaking in or leveling up, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes packed with practical tips, expert conversations, and real-world insights. And if you want to explore training and resources from Management Consulted or to work with me one-on-one directly, check out the links in the show notes. We'll see you next time.